Hello, hello.
Hi, Cami.
Hi, Carrie. Hi,
How are you?
Amanda. Hi, Danny. Welcome. Katie and Veronica, hello. Thanks for being here. You are welcome to turn your cameras on, but if you are feeling more reserved and are wanting to keep your camera off, that's okay too. I'm looking at everyone's names and I know you have beautiful faces behind your behind those names. We'll just wait another couple minutes just for people to drop in. How's it going, Amanda? Glad you could join us.
Finally got the right time.
That's how it goes with these online events, and everyone lives in a different part of the country or the world, and then yeah, the time change is rough. Nika, thanks for being here. Well, we'll give it one more minute in case we have any stragglers, and then I'll get my screen share going here. If you do not have a journal or a notebook and something to write with, I encourage you to grab that now. You'll probably want to take notes on some things. I have some questions for you to reflect on. And of course, you can always come back and watch the recording and go through it again if you need to. But as we go along, if anything stands out, then I definitely encourage you to take some notes because you'll be identifying some action steps that you can take to to support yourself. So make sure to grab something to write with. Glad you made it, Katie. All right. If anyone else decides to join, then they can just hop on in. Right. Right. The screen share going. Organize my space. Cool. And we have another Katie joining us. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. If you are looking for a little guidance on how to navigate life after loss, then you are in the right place. Um, yeah, this is what I've dedicated my life to do, basically. It's been a journey of my own process of figuring out how to keep going, how to live after loss. And how to create a life where we can have our grief and we can have those bad days, and we can also create some space for the good days as well, and for the happiness and for the joy. So that's what this is all about today. So I'd like to share with you the framework of support needed to start processing these experiences and taking steps forward. And just want to throw out there that when I say take steps forward or move forward, I do not at all mean move on. I mean that we're never going to forget about our person or our grief. We're never going to get over things. We're always going to have this impact in our lives. So it's not about like moving on in the sense where we're forgetting or pretending like it didn't happen. To me, it's about continuing on with life, recognizing that we have our own journey as well, and we're going to experience loss. And we have this awareness, of course, that our time is limited too. So what do we do at that time? So that's what this is all about today. And before we dive in here, just just want to welcome you and share a little bit about me. And before I even do that, I would love if we could take a few breaths together and just to ground into the space here. I know that we've had probably a long day before all this. It's the evening time on Thursday, so midweek and all of that. So just wanted to offer a little time to just drop in and release some stress. So I invite you to find a comfortable seat. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes. Just get nice and comfortable wherever you're at. Start to bring your attention to the breath. Take a nice deep sip of air in through the nose. Breathing down into the belly, expanding the chest and the lungs. And then a nice long exhale out the mouth. Maybe you let out a little sigh just to release the day so far. Do 2 more deep cleansing breaths like this. In through the nose and out the mouth. One more at your own pace. And as you inhale, imagine that you are scooping up any of that stress or tension that you feel. And a nice long exhale to soften. Now take a moment and just pay attention to how your body feels today. Bringing some awareness to maybe your feet. If the feet are connected to the earth, paying attention to what that feels like. Noticing your sits bones and noticing the support that's underneath your body, feeling the weight of your body pulling you down, pulling you towards the center of the earth, feeling that pull of gravity and what it's like to have a fleshy, breathing body. Noticing any sensations. Noticing how your belly feels. You've got a lot of organs within the abdomen. Just paying attention to that space. Observing anything that's coming up for you. And moving through the belly, make your way into your chest, noticing your lungs expand and contract as you breathe. Feeling the rib cage slightly splay outwards as the breath moves through you. And noticing that gentle deflation, that rise and fall of the breath. Just anchoring your awareness at the breath and in the body. And I invite you to explore how your heart space feels. Noticing your heart beating in your chest. Maybe you notice any physical sensations within the chest, within the heart. And if there are any emotions, any feelings that are present for you in this moment, to just give your feelings some space, to acknowledge that they're there without judgment, without labels, just noticing what's here for you. Take a deep breath into the heart space, nourishing your heart with some fresh oxygen. And if it feels good for you, I invite you to place your hands over your heart, connecting in with your heart, giving yourself some love and gratitude for showing up for yourself today. Whether you're here in this moment or watching the replay, you've created time for this. So honoring that, honoring yourself. And if your heart loves and misses someone today, to just bring them to your mind, to feel them with you in your heart. Maybe you see their smile. and dedicate this time, this grief work to yourself and to your person. You can gently release the hands to the lap. Take another deep breath in through the nose, biggest breath that you've taken all day. And a nice long exhale to ground yourself in your body, ground yourself in this present moment. Feel the earth beneath you, feel your body supported. And when you are ready, in your own time, you can gently blink the eyes open and return back to this space. All right. So thanks again for being here. I know it's not easy doing grief work. It's not easy paying attention to all the things that make us want to quit, all the things that make us want to hide away and sleep all day and avoid what's coming up for us. So just want to take a moment to honor that you're doing the work and you're making changes, and this is the first step. So thanks for being here with me. My name is Cami Thielander. I am a grief coach and a craniosacral therapist and a yoga teacher. So I do all kinds of things around supporting the body, supporting the whole person, and really integrating that into supporting people who are experiencing grief and loss, and supporting our whole lives moving forward from that. So I do this work because I, of course, have experienced my own grief and loss. This top picture is me and my dad. My dad died when I was 11 years old. He had ALS. And before that, my parents were divorced. And before that, we lost our house to foreclosure. So I grew up on grief and experienced a lot of loss before the age of 11. And then I was there with my dad bedside in hospice after ALS, and this disease had taken his body. So after that, my mom remarried, and I had this amazing man, Greg, in my life. He's the one in the bottom picture here. He became my stepdad, and I had a whole new family. And my mom married Greg knowing that he had prostate cancer. So we spent years while he was getting treatment and all of that. And eventually he ended up dying. I was 15 years old. So this was just 4 years after my dad had passed, and welcomed in a new dad. And of course, that didn't last very long. And I was bedside with Greg as well when he passed from cancer. Totally different experiences. I saw the chaos of my dad's passing in hospice. And because my parents were divorced, there was a lot of disorganization. And honestly, it did not go very smoothly. Greg's passing was much more of a good death, you could call it. We had a lot of conversation around how he wanted the end of life to look for him. He was surrounded by family, and it was really quite beautiful. So the grief for both of those situations has been very different, and especially because they were quite different relationships. But after that, especially being 15 years old, having gone through all of that, I had no idea how to process this, as most of us have found when we're thrown into grief and loss. It's like, what do we do? Where do we start? There's so much change. Our entire lives are different, and we're flooded with this overwhelm of emotions and all of the things that we have to figure out. So being 15 years old and not able to deal with this, I distracted myself. And I spent the next 10 years distracting myself with school, with substances, with boyfriends, and whatever else I could do to just not be present with my grief, until that caught up with me and I started experiencing chronic illness because of it, mainly depression, anxiety, panic attacks, things like that were manifesting, along with some physical pains in my body. And that's what really sparked my interest in exploring how to take care of myself, because things were getting worse for me. And long story short, I was in a yoga class, and I was at the end of the class laying in Shavasana. I was like 18 or 19 years old. So had spent some years suppressing my grief, and all of a sudden started sobbing, started releasing, laying in Shavasana in this class with other people laying on the floor in the studio with me. And I realized from then on that what was coming out of me was my grief, was all of these emotions that I was really not willing to spend time with. They were forcing their way out in ways that I couldn't control. So from there, I went on a whole tangent of getting into holistic healing modalities, essential oils, food as medicine, supplements, supporting the body. Had tried counseling and medication and just all of the things, but really seeking a whole person approach to healing. And that's how I got into being a yoga teacher. That's how I found bodywork and craniosacral essential oils, all of these things that we can use to support our process in our body. So that's a little bit about what I'm going to share with you today, are nuggets from what I have learned over the years and from my trainings. And my goal is to help you identify a couple things that you can do for yourself right after this presentation, a couple next steps that you can take to better support yourself in your grief. So my intention is really to give you some tools that you can walk away with so that you have a better understanding of what it is that you really need, and then what can we do about it. And I just wanted to share this quote from David Kessler. He's my favorite. He says that life gives us pain. Our job is to experience it when it gets handed to us. Avoidance of loss has a cost. The only way out of the pain is through the pain. And I just think that's so relevant because, of course, life is going to give us pain and suffering. Like, people are going to die, shit's going to happen. That's just the way it goes. And it's not about avoiding it or preventing these things from happening. Of course, we don't want them to happen, but they're going to happen. So when it comes up, how do we do it? How do we navigate all of this? How do we work our way through the pain and support ourselves in this journey, knowing that it's going to be inevitable? So that's what this is all about. It's not about making your grief go away. It's not about moving on or getting over it. It's about, how do we honor this? How do we take care of ourselves, work through the pain, process our grief, feel all the emotions, and work to support ourselves in creating a life where peace and happiness and all of these other life experiences that we get to have can coexist with the grief as well. So both, and holding space for all of it. Let's see. How do I click to the next page here? Bear with me. My slideshow doesn't want to scoot. There we go. Cool. So, as you can imagine, as you've all probably experienced, when we're thrown into grief and loss, it can feel like this. Our whole world is just ripped out from underneath us. Our sense of safety is destroyed. We feel crumbled and heartbroken and shattered into a million pieces, and we're left with this seemingly pile of disastrous mess and rubble. And it's like, what do we do? Like, our whole sense of safety, our whole life has just turned upside down. And when we are figuring out how to work with this, how to rebuild our lives again after this disaster, after this loss has happened, really the key thing, the next steps are to clean this up, start to process and do something with all of this rubble, and then to start to build a framework that we can build on top of. So this is really the part that we're going to focus on today, is how do we build a framework of support to help us to rebuild our life after loss, to help us to continue having our wholesome, fulfilling, purposeful life, even with our grief, even while missing our person. And this is going to be a process of cleaning it up and spending time with the grief and breaking down and letting yourself be a puddle, letting yourself grieve the loss and this disaster that you've experienced, and then to work with the emotions that are coming up to keep transforming all of that, so that eventually, with some support and with some planning and dreaming and thinking about how you want your life to be, slowly piecing that together, navigating all of that, then the goal is that we can build something really beautiful, even after loss, even while we have our heartbreak, even while we have our grief, that we get to have an amazing life along with our grief as well. So that's what this is. That's what I'm sharing with you today, is how do we build this framework of support? What does that even look like? How do we even get to this place from here? So this framework of support, we're going to go over all this today, and I'm going to go over all this super high level. I just want you to take just a couple things from these areas of support. These are the main areas that I work with my clients. So this is going to be a lot of information, and this is something that I've literally built out a program like over the course of months that we work to really make sure this framework of support is solid. So it's going to be a lot of information, but just, take it in bite-sized pieces. My goal is that you have just a little understanding of something small that you can do for yourself to walk away with. So don't feel pressured to like remember everything or to like change all of the things all at once. Like that's not how this process is going to work. But from this framework of support, my goal is that you identify a couple areas that are needing the most support, and that'll give you a little direction on where to start. So the main pillars of this framework of support, of course, is community. So having people to support you in this, because we can't do it alone. Identity, figuring out how your loss has changed you, this sense of self. Emotional resiliency, expressing your grief. The body, how to manage stress and when we get triggered. Mindset, so reframing all those perspectives and limiting beliefs that come up. Connection, so connecting with your person, honoring them, taking them with you in your life. And then vision, finding hope and purpose. So let's dive into community. And then after all this, if anyone has any questions, we'll spend some time with that. But I'm just going to throw a bunch of information out at you, write down some things, and then we can go over it and keep diving deeper into this if you need some more support here. Okay, community. Engaging your tribe. Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure as you've all have experienced, oftentimes when we experience the recent loss of someone, it's like everyone comes running, like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. They'll often ask what they can do to help. And they'll show up for the funeral. They might check in with you after a while, but then it's like as time goes on, those people drop off and people stop showing up. And even though we are still steeping in the grief of our loss and needing support, it's like, where did all the people go? We might feel like the people who we thought were our friends are no longer showing up, or we feel like our grief is making people uncomfortable and they don't know how to be around us anymore. Like all of those things are totally valid. And of course, that makes this whole process a lot harder when we don't have the people there. We don't have our community, our village, our tribe to really hold us in this process because we're a puddle, we're a mess. Like we cannot do this alone. We're going to need to lean on people. So how do we find our community? How do we gather our tribe? The biggest thing that I see with my clients is that they will, like if there's a loss in the family, they will lean on other family members for support. And that can be problematic because it's really hard for grieving people to support other grieving people, right? Like everybody's grieving in their own different, unique way. Everybody's needs are going to be so different and everybody's needing support. So you're going to want to turn to someone who is not grieving the loss of your person, who is going to be able to show up for you and offer you that sense of support or stability or whatever it is that you need. So this can be tricky, of course, because first we have to identify what we even need. We have to figure out what it is that we need. And then we have to figure out who has the capacity to even support me. Who can I ask? And then how do I ask them? Like, how do I realistically start to engage this support and bring this support from other people? So this can be tricky. So just a couple of questions that I invite you to reflect on is right away when we're thinking about community and your tribe, who pops up in your head? Like who is someone that you think has the capacity to support you? Someone who's not grieving, someone who maybe you have a friend or a family member or someone in your life that you would be able to go to for something. And you might have different people in your life that have different roles that they play. So you might have someone who's really good for when you have that emotional breakdown, you are at the grocery store and a song comes on and you just lose it, right? Like we all have those moments. Who's your go-to person in that situation? That person who would just be ready to pick up the phone and let you vent, let you cry, be with you in that. That might be a very different person from when you are, maybe you're feeling a lot of anger with your grief and you like to be active, you like to stay busy, you like to keep your hands busy, and you're wanting to do things. You're an active griever and you want an activity to do. Well, maybe you have a friend that you like to go to the gym with, or maybe you have someone that can go for a hike with you, things that you can do with people. And that might look different based on the person, based on their relationship. So just kind of identifying like, okay, having the awareness of what is it that I need? Who in my life has the capacity to support this? How can I fulfill this need if I need someone else to help me with this? And then how do I ask for help? What does that even look like? How can we come up with an agreement to to find a way that feels good for both of us? Because you might find out that you are asking for something from someone and maybe they don't have the capacity to support you. Maybe they really are very uncomfortable and just not a good person to go to when it comes to grief and loss because they just don't understand. So just keeping that in mind, that not everyone is going to be that person for you. And that's something that we often learn the hard way because we want people to show up for us a certain way. And the hard part is that people don't know how to show up for us. That's something that we have to teach them. So we might have to be very honest and very frank and very straightforward about asking for what we need. And then if they legitimately, for whatever reason, cannot support you in that way, to honor that and to find a different tribe member who can help you with this, and to celebrate that they're placing their boundary and you're also meeting your needs, doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. So just some questions to reflect on the bottom here. Who has the capacity to support me? Maybe someone who's not grieving. Who can I ask to be a part of my tribe? Who can I ask, hey, Jenny, I really like to have someone I can call right away when I'm feeling triggered, if I'm out and about and I just need someone to vent to. Would you be okay if if you see me calling, if you're available, can you just check in with me? And if you're available, hold space for me on the phone for a few minutes, whatever it is, to be very clear about that. And then to ask your tribe, what exactly do you need from them? You're going to want to be clear because people are going to want a description on how to show up for you, how they can best support you. And people really do want to support you. They just don't know how to do it. So that's part of what we can work with as far as helping them help us. All right. Next is identity. Sense of self. So, of course, everything is different now. Your whole world has changed, and you are different now too. I hear from a lot of people, it's like they're recognizing, like, I'm not the same. There's no way that I can go back to who I was. Things will never be the same. And it's because it's true, right? Like, everything has changed. Your whole sense of self has changed. Maybe your roles in your family have changed. Maybe you're no longer you no longer have a spouse who's living, or whatever it may be. Like, your sense of self and what you have identified as you has shifted, and that can make us feel really lost. So really bringing some awareness to, how are you different now? What changed? Maybe we experienced that, our entire worldviews on life and death and what it means to live a meaningful, purposeful life, what's important to us, what we want to spend our time doing. Maybe we have a wake-up call on these big things because we realize that death can happen at any time. We've seen that firsthand, and that's scary, and that can influence how we continue to live our lives too. So I encourage you to spend some time thinking about this, spend some time reflecting on how you have changed from your loss. Who are you now? Who do you want to become? I think with some of these big questions, this can be really tricky because it feels like we've totally lost ourselves, right? It's like we don't know who we are anymore. And this is going to take some time to spend time with ourselves, to build this relationship with ourselves, to go on this inner journey and bring some awareness back to our body, back to what we think, back to what we feel, to understand how this grief is impacting us and what we want to do with it. So just a couple things to reflect on with those questions at the bottom here. And if anything pops up, I encourage you to write a couple things down here. Emotional resilience, all the emotions. There's a little quote that I want to share here before we dive in. It's from Bessel van der Kolk, and he's the one who wrote The Body Keeps the Score. And I appreciate his perspective because there is more and more science these days that shows all about emotions and stress and all of these more energetic or abstract ideas. But they're very, very legitimate. They very much have a real effect on us as you're experiencing with all of the emotions. And he says that neuroscience research shows that the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our inner experience and learning to befriend what is going on inside ourselves. So basically, this neuroscientist is telling us to have some awareness with how you feel and to learn about what those signals are meaning. So that's the way I view energy and emotions. And when we are flooded with all these emotions and grief, it's very normal for us to want to avoid this overwhelm, to avoid feeling this way because it's uncomfortable and it's scary. And it's normal to want to distract. It's normal to want to dismiss our feelings, to bottle them up because we have conditioning that tells us that for whatever reason, we're not allowed to have feelings, right? Maybe we're supposed to be a good girl and we're supposed to not make a scene or whatever it is. Oftentimes, society has these ways that have suppressed our emotional expression, this divine feminine from coming through and really leaning into the shadow self, leaning into those dark emotions, those big, scary emotions that are going to come up. But the thing with emotional energy, the thing with emotions is that emotions are energy in motion. So emotion, energy in motion. When these feelings come up for us, they well up, and this is energy that wants to move through the body. So if we are resisting this energy from moving, if we are choking on our tears and stuffing it down, or we don't give ourselves that time and space to release the anger or say what we need to say to someone, then that energy is being suppressed and it is physically being trapped inside of us. Like it's not moving. And if that energy doesn't flow the way that it wants to, the way that it is supposed to flow, because it's energy in motion, if we prevent that motion from happening, then the suppression can literally get trapped in the body. These emotions get trapped in the body and they manifest physically. That was a lot of what I was experiencing with suppressing my grief for years and years. That energy just got literally like shoved into my physical tissues, and I was experiencing organ damage because of my anger, because of my grief. I was experiencing all kinds of different symptoms in my body, along with, of course, anxiety, depression, all these nervous system things that we'll go into here in a minute. So my biggest practice with grief and emotions is to just feel it. Do your best to be here for it, to allow all of it, because emotions are not good or bad. Energy is not good or bad, even though our society likes to label things that way. Just understand that this is just energy, and when we can allow it to move and flow and we can lean into it and follow it and release it, then we're gonna feel the relief on the other side of it. Right? It's like, have you ever seen a kid who maybe he falls down or whatever it is, and he's sad, and he sits there and he's like choking on his tears, like trying not to cry. He's like holding it in, and it's like, dude, just come on, cry, like let it out, because you know he's gonna cry for like 4 minutes and then he'll be fine and he'll be laughing and jumping all over the playground again. You know, it's like, okay, let's just lean into it, let it happen, and then we'll find that on the other side of it, that energy has moved and we're feeling a release, we're feeling a little lighter once we allow that processing to happen. Emotional literacy is also the practice of becoming aware of how you're really feeling. So that practice that we did at the beginning, where we tuned in with the heart and was like, okay, like what emotions, what feelings are present? If you can name them in your head, like, wow, I'm feeling some uneasiness, I'm feeling this sense of pressure. Like if we can name those, when we create that space for our feelings, then we are better able to work through it. Then we're better able to identify what it is that we need to do to take care of ourselves, and then to allow for that emotional expression to happen. So of course, expressing emotions is different depending on who you are and what your grief is like and what you need in the moment. But I really encourage my clients and everybody experiencing grief to just lean in, let it flow. Like there's no apology necessary. You're allowed to be a puddle. You're allowed to be a mess. You're allowed to scream and kick and cry for as long as you need to. And we might find that we're just crying and crying and crying, or there's a lot of emotional energy and it's like it just keeps coming and coming and coming. And that's because there's a lot to detox, right? This was a really big loss and a really big change. So if it feels like there's not a sense of relief, hang in there. Hang in there, keep going, keep breathing. This is a process that you can't rush. So I just want to throw that out there too. If this feels like a lot, it is a lot. And it's a continuous practice of showing up for ourselves, creating that space and that awareness to feel all of it. And then we might need times where we distract ourselves and we go out and we do something to keep us busy because we can't spend 24/7 in this emotional space. And that's okay too. So a couple things to reflect on. How do I allow myself to fully feel my grief and my emotions? When it comes up, do I let myself lean into it and I allow that expression, I allow that flow, or do I like to suppress or distract? What does that look like for me? When I notice these feelings come up, what are my habits? What are my go-tos? Am I avoiding things, or can I be fully present and feel them all? How do I process my feelings? All right, the body. This is my favorite framework of support piece here, because for me, in my losses, I was 11 and 15, so I was pretty young, and developmentally with my brain, I had a hard time consciously processing things in my thinking mind because kids make everything about them, and we'll go into this a little bit later about mindset things, but anyway, the way that I have found for me personally, processing my grief happens easiest for me when I can lean into my body, when I can understand my body, when I can build a relationship with the physical sensations that are happening in my body. That gives me clues as to what I need to do to support myself. So, the body. So when we lose someone important, biologically speaking, in our brain, the mammalian piece of our brain views the loss of a loved one as a life threat. So there's a part of your brain that is wired for connection, that is wired to lean on people for survival. We need one another for survival. You think about, obviously, a baby needs its mother, just like how children, like parents need their children too. They're wired to protect one another and to be protected. So as mammals, when we lose someone, that part of our brain like freaks out and sends a stress response to the rest of our body. So now our brain is freaking out and our brain's telling our body to freak out. And what happens is we go into survival mode. Our body views this as a life threat. And now all of those signals of kicking into high gear of survival, fight, flight, freeze, all of those things are now turned on. And they're constantly turned on because you're constantly remembering that they're gone. So this is rough in the beginning because your brain is trying to wrap its head around this information. You've heard that they've died. You know consciously that this is what happened and that, that you are grasping this new reality, but the rest of your brain hasn't quite taken in that information yet. It needs more proof. It needs more triggers and more circumstances that are going to give your brain more information that, oh yeah, they're not here. Oh yeah, I can't expect them to pick up the phone anymore. All of these little things that our brain has to learn. And in that process, that mammalian part of our brain signals a stress response. So when the body is in a stress response, the body's nervous system. So our nervous system, the way that we take in the world around us, our senses, so what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're sensing, what we're smelling, tasting, all of that is how we're taking in the world around us, and we're getting cues if something is safe or if something is threatening. And if something is threatening, then our body, if it's a big enough threat, will kick on all of its survival instincts to run away from the threat and run towards safety, or to fight for our lives, or to freeze and shut down and be small because that's safer. We don't want to be seen and heard because then we could get attacked or whatever it may be. So all of those instinctual responses are being kicked on, and that can have a detrimental effect to the body. So you may have noticed that grief is exhausting. You feel physically tired. You might have body aches and pains and tension. Your digestion might be off. You might be feeling a lot of physical effects from the grief. And a lot of that is because that stress response is heightened all of the time as your brain remembers again and again and again that your person is not here. So with this in mind, this takes some training of the nervous system. We have to work with the body. Knowing about this brings a sense of awareness, and with that awareness comes power because we have a choice to do something about it. So when you can understand that your body is freaking out and you're getting these signals of stress or grief. So for me, a big one is anxiety, panic attacks, like when I feel anger or I feel a charge in my nervous system. I now know that this is the way that of my body telling me that there is grief or stress. And I'm feeling that charge in my nervous system. I'm amped. My body wants to run or fight. So with that in mind, I now can listen to my body's response and use tools to self-regulate. So self-regulation means noticing when your nervous system is in that fight or flight mode, or maybe it's in a depressive shutdown mode. That's another side of the nervous system that'll protect us from stress. To notice when that's coming up for you, and then to have some tools that you can turn to be able to balance that, to bring your body back to a sense of feeling safe and calm, where our body can heal and regenerate itself again. So that's the goal, is to notice when we're stressed out, and then to do our best to bring our body back into that calm state of being, which is tough when we are fresh in our grief, because this is just going to be turned on all the time. So we're going to have to take a lot of extra time for self-care. So just to throw out some nervous system regulation strategies that you might explore would be like breathing, grounding your body. So just like we did in the beginning, where we took some deep breaths, those deep inhales, and then making your exhale even longer than the inhale helps to release cortisol. It helps to literally have those stress hormones that are coursing through your blood and in your body. It helps to burn those up. Movement, doing some quick shaking, jumping, flailing yourself around, that'll help to burn up the cortisol in your body as well. Exercise, of course, going for a walk, moving your body, getting up and doing some jumping jacks, whatever it is that you need to do, like moving that charge out of your nervous system is going to be helpful for you to come back into that calm state of being. And then movement is also good for if you're someone who falls more on the depressive, hopelessness, can't get out of bed, sleeping too much kind of a thing. That's like the energy needs a little pick me up, right? It's like we're shut down, and movement and deep breathing can also help to stimulate our nervous system back up into that state of a little bit more balanced energy. Meditation is also a good self-regulation strategy, breathing techniques, movement. This is going to look different for every person. This is something that I work with one-on-one with my clients, because it is very personal to your body and your needs and the way that your grief is showing up. So just something to keep in mind. However, some high-level questions for you to reflect on are, how do you feel in your body? Did you notice any of those symptoms that I named earlier? Maybe you've noticed sleeping issues or digestion issues, or panic, or a sense of tightness in your chest, or whatever it may be. Just noticing what's there for you. And then how can you support your physical well-being? What can you do? What self-regulation strategies do you want to look into? What are some ways that you can help to release stress? What are some ways that you can rest more? What are some ways that you can meet your physical needs in a different way? So to start to ponder those things. Set. Yeah, so I was having this conversation earlier with Danny about how in grief, our mind likes to decide things about our situation that might not be true. So when our brain is freaking out because, of course, someone that we love has died, or there's some other grief or loss in our life that we're experiencing, our brain feels out of control. We feel helpless in the situation. There's nothing that we can do. And our brain likes to think that we have control. We really want control because controlling things feels so much better than just being completely helpless. And that's hard to accept, that there's nothing we can do about death. We can't choose when someone dies. Um, and a lot of things are out of our control. So because our brain just does not like that, it will try to place blame or guilt or shame or point a finger or come up with stories about things that really are not true, but they feel better to us than facing the truth of the reality that this is totally out of our control. And because our brain likes to do this, to try to have a sense of control, to try to understand the situation in a way when it's in that freaking out, stressful state, we might make some internalizations or create some stories or some beliefs that are not serving us. So start to pay attention to what kinds of thoughts are going on in your head, what kinds of stories or self-talk is happening. What words are you speaking out loud to yourself? Are there criticisms? Are there blame? Is there guilt or shame or what ifs or unanswered questions? All of those things. And then start to reflect on that, bring some awareness and observe those thoughts, observe those beliefs, observe how you're telling your story and the words that you're speaking, because all of that has power that shapes our reality. What we believe is partially, is hugely dictating how we're operating in the world and how we're experiencing things. And they're all things that we can change. Really, like if we have a belief about something, we might really think that it's true. But at the end of the day, if we reframe that perspective, we might see the truth behind that, that it's really not the reality. So for example, when I had was experiencing my losses, because kids are self-centered and they're learning about the world, my kid brain decided from my losses that I must not be a good enough daughter, that my dads chose to leave me because I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, therefore I am not deserving of having men in my life. I decided that, I lived that, I created situations that reflected that in my life, and I really believed that. Maybe not consciously, because I couldn't quite, like, I didn't know why I was doing certain things until I realized I was doing these things, because subconsciously, that's what my brain was telling me all these years. That's what this pattern and this belief was telling me. And it was underlying a lot of my decisions and a lot of the actions and behaviors I was taking, because at the end of the day, I really didn't think that I was worthy of having a healthy relationship with a man. And you can imagine how that impacted me and my relationships and my personal well-being and all of that good stuff. And that all came from a belief that I formed when I was young that I didn't even realize was there until I started to reflect on my relationship patterns and how I was self-sabotaging everything. So bringing some awareness to what thoughts are going on in your mind, what stories are you telling yourself, what do you believe, and what might not be true. So just starting to notice some of those things, writing it down, journaling is a really great way to reflect on our words and our thought patterns. And then when we identify a story or a way of thinking or a belief that doesn't feel good for us, and that's a really good signal that it's not true, is when it doesn't feel good in our body, then what part of that might not be true? What part can I challenge? And then what's a new story or a new belief that I might want to replace that? And then when we know where we're at and this new story that we want instead, then we can start this practice of literally rewiring your brain into this new belief and this new reality. And that takes time and practice. It's literally a neurological process that needs to happen, and we need to learn with repetition. So just throwing that out there, that this is going to take some deep diving and exploration, but really to start bringing some awareness to how you tell your story and what's a new story that you want to start telling yourself. And I realize that we're already at time, so I'm going to try to keep this quick. I apologize. I want to be respectful for all of you here. Okay, so honoring and remembering your person. How do we integrate their memory into your life? How do you carry them with you moving forward? Death ends a life, but not our relationship, our love, or our hope, from David Kessler. So I like this because even though physically they may not be here with us anymore, we still very much have a relationship with them energetically and emotionally. We're still able to connect with them, and we're still very much involved. They're still very much involved in a part of our life, just in a totally different way now that they're not here physically with us. So when we're thinking about connecting with our person, this of course looks different for everyone, especially if you're religious or spiritual, or if you're not at all, then that's going to have a totally different relationship with how you might structure some honoring practices. So just thinking about, how do you connect with your person? What are some ways that you want to take them with you, whether there are photos or pieces of clothing or jewelry or things that you do to celebrate them on certain days, ways that you incorporate them into holidays. Maybe you have a little altar or a little area set up where you can go and visit them physically. Maybe you have a space for their ashes or their clothing, or something special to you that you can keep close. All of those things are valid. And I encourage you to think about these honoring practices, things that you can do, make a little ritual out of it, to make a little process of connecting with them, and creating space for this grief tending, creating space to integrate them and carry them with you. And it might feel painful at first. It might feel painful for a really long time, but we might notice that with time, as we connect with them more and more, and we're doing this inner work, and we're processing through all of this, and we're learning how to navigate life again, the goal is that we can remember them with more love than pain, so that it's not so unbearably painful, that we can have more a smile on our face, and we can feel that love and that connection with them when we think about them, rather than crying all the time. And that's okay too, but just know that this will shift as you continue to process. So just thinking about, how do you connect with your person? How do you want to carry them with you? What practices or little rituals could you incorporate into your life that would help you to feel more connected to them? And then vision. So thinking about, of course, now that your whole life is different and your life plans have changed, you thought your life was going in a certain direction, and now it's going in you don't even know what direction it's going in anymore. Finding a direction can really be helpful, because it gives us a reason, it gives us purpose, it gives us something to move towards. It's kind of like if you got in your car and you just started driving. You didn't know where you were going, you didn't have a place in mind, you didn't have an intention, you just got in and you started driving off into the abyss, into a place that you've never been before, and you feel really lost and you feel really scared because you're going into this unknown and you don't know where you're going or where it's going to lead. And that can be scary. So having an idea of how you want your life to be, what you want to create in this lifetime, thinking about ideally in your future, what do you want your life to look like? What changes do you want to see for yourself? Do you have goals? Do you have anything that you really want to be doing with your life? To identify those and to name them as the destination, so that you can understand where you are, right? Reflecting on your identity of where you're at right now. And then putting that little pin on the map of where you want to be, naming that destination of a goal or a vision, a purpose of some kind. And then from there, we can map the route to get you there. So then we can, put the GPS on, or whatever it is, to navigate that journey to get you there. But having that destination in mind is going to be really helpful as you are processing, so that you know where you're going. Along that journey, creating meaning, we can transform this process and create something rich and fulfilling. Like for me, I've created a lot of meaning from my dad's deaths, because I get to do this work now. I get to normalize this, and I get to support other people, and I get to support myself. And for me, that's fulfilling, and that's rich. That's making me have a purpose in my life. And that's something that I feel really good about. And for me, that's healing, and that's transforming my grief and my pain. Even though, of course, those things are going to keep coming up for me, I have at least something to work towards. I have goals for myself. So that can be really helpful. So just starting to think about, what is important to you now? What do you value? What's something that you really want to create for yourself in this lifetime? How do you want your life to be? What makes you feel fulfilled? So just starting to reflect on all of that. Oh, thank you, Katie. I see your message. Yes, have a good night. I'm sorry I'm running over with time. I want to make sure I'm giving you all the value that I can. So if you're able to hang out with me, awesome. And if not, that's okay too. If you need to leave, then I'll send you the recording. But we're just about done here. I'll go to the next slide here. Okay, so we just went through that whole framework of support. And that was a lot thrown at you. But I would love if you could take just a couple minutes and reflect on, out of all of those things. So we have, out of those 7 frameworks, community, identity, emotional resilience, the body, mindset, connection, and vision. Out of all of those things, what is like the top thing that needs the most help right now? And maybe you have a few things that might need some support. So just thinking about what really needs the most support, what needs the most attention, the most love, that is feeling the most unstable or wobbly right now that you would need to focus on first to feel a little bit more solid. So thinking about those top 3 areas, and maybe what's that top number 1 thing that is feeling like you really need to figure out how to get some help with this. So why is this the top thing that you're needing support with? Why does this feel rocky? Why does this feel unstable? What needs to change? And as you're reflecting on this, what is one small thing that you can do to support this change? So maybe you recognize that, wow, my body feels really off. I'm emotionally all over the place and I have nobody in my life that I can lean on. Those are my top 3 things right now: community, body, and emotions. I think the most helpful thing for me right now would probably be getting a handle on my body, because I notice when I'm stressed out and I get triggered and I get thrown into a depression, or I feel like I have this anxiety and this panic or this anger that's coming up, it would be helpful for me to learn how to self-regulate so that I can feel more grounded. I can feel a little bit more calmer in my body, and I can take care of myself physically more so I can balance my energy levels. And then maybe when I'm doing that, then I'll have a better idea of how I can reach out to some people and start to develop those relationships and find my tribe. So just brainstorming, what are those top 3 areas that need the most help? What's the number 1 thing? What is one small baby action step that you can do to support yourself in creating a change? So I'll give you a moment to reflect on that. But does anybody have any questions about any of that? I know I threw a lot of information out at you. So just want to see if anybody has any thoughts or any comments or any questions. Please feel free to take yourself off of mute and we can talk about it. And if not, that's okay too. Oh, that's a lot to digest. All right. So I hope you all have a good idea of 1 or 2 things that you can do to help support a change, to help support yourself in your grief, to help take a baby step forward towards this new life that you're creating as you're navigating all of the emotions, all the overwhelm, all of the change, building eventually that new house, that new structure that you are slowly but surely putting together for yourself. Figuring out how to, of course, clean up that rubble and the disaster of everything falling apart, and then building that framework so that we can start to fill in the rest little by little and create this sense of safety, create this new life, and this new version of ourselves that's stepping into this totally new reality and figuring out how the heck to do all of that and what that looks like. So I hope that gave you a little bit of direction as to where you can start. Of course, this is a lifelong practice, but you know, if you're needing some support with getting that structure up and running so that you don't feel so broken or lost, then of course I am absolutely here for you. I do this professionally, so if you are feeling overwhelmed with this process and you are needing some help taking steps forward or figuring out where to start with all of it, then absolutely I am here for you for that. I'm happy to have a conversation and help you to get some tools in your toolbox so that you can start to build that framework of support for yourself. So thank you so much for being here. I know this is a hard topic to explore, so I appreciate your bravery. I appreciate you doing this work to figure all this out. I know it's not easy, and just want to remind you that you're not alone in this. I know there's a lot of names. I don't see faces on this call, and that's okay. But there's a lot of people. There's a big community here for you of people that do really want to support you in this. So just a reminder that you're not alone, and there is so much love and support for you. And of course, if you need anything, I'm here. If you're not already a part of the Embodied Grief Support Group, that's a community that's here for you as well. There's lots of resources in that space too. So unless anyone has any other questions or comments, then that's all I have for you today. You are free to go on with the rest of your night. Thank you so much for being here again. And let me know if I can support in any way.
Thanks, Cami.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, everyone. I know I went long. But yeah, I appreciate you hanging out here with me tonight. Bye.